Hey, welcome back to another How We Make It from Huffman Leatherworks. Today we're going to be making a holster for an XD40 outside the waistband. So here you can see we got the pattern printed. This would be the same pattern that you get on our Etsy site or on our website. And there's two versions of it. One, the front piece of leather is a little bit bigger. I use that for when I add a liner. Some people don't want a liner, but you'll have that option, and the holes will be punched such that you can add a liner or not. So we start by cutting the pattern out and go ahead and tape it to your leather. I like to kind of trim it up and get it nice. Today we're using a chrome-free pigskin suede on the inside. I like to use suede. My personal holsters have suede. I've heard people say that it can get dirty and scratch the finish on your gun. I don't know. I'd like to see that. I mean, maybe if you're out in the desert or someplace real dusty and dirty all the time, maybe you get some of that, but under normal use I think you're okay. I've never had a problem with it. So go ahead and use the suede. I just use some spray adhesive to get that tacked in there, because we sew it in too, so it's a little bit faster and easier just to use the spray tack. Go ahead and get that all tacked in there. Get it tacked in and make sure there's no wrinkles, and then we'll go ahead and use a roller and roll it down. Make sure there's no air bubbles or anything in there. Go ahead and take a knife, a razor blade. I use an X-Acto, doesn't really matter, and trim off the excess lining. Of course, we still have to cut the holster out of the leather, so this doesn't have to be precise. I just like to clean it up a little bit, kind of get it out of your way. Of course, there are many different linings you can use. On some of these I use a calf skin, a regular pig skin, almost anything. Just makes it look a little nicer, I think. I don't know that it really, makes a difference function-wise, but it does make it look nicer. So when we get that all trimmed up, we'll go ahead and punch all the stitching holes. Of course, with this version we are using a lining, so we'll go ahead and punch those lining holes too. Like I said, if you weren't using a lining, there are holes on there, and the drawings show you this, that what not to punch if you're not using a lining. So once we get that all those holes punched, go ahead and I cut it out at this point. Whenever I can, I try to use a straight edge on anything that I can use it on. The rest we just freehanded. Of course, you can use anything you want to cut this out. I use a X-Acto knife. I don't know, I've used all those fancy leather knives and all that, and X-Acto is, I think, by far the best. The blades are cheap. As soon as it gets a little dull, put in a new one and away you go. You don't have to spend a lot of money on those fancy made-for leather knives. It's a knife. It cuts stuff. There you got your final product. At this point, I already went ahead and stitched along the open spots, if you will. Like I said, the design file shows you what to stitch for the lining. If we didn't have the lining, we wouldn't stitch that. And so now we'll go ahead and glue it in there. If you notice, the one on the front side of the leather hasn't been punched yet for the belt. I do that after the fact. I only punch one side. That way you can assure you get a perfect alignment of those belt openings. So we'll go ahead and glue this up. And said there are two different versions. One with the front piece of leather a little bit bigger than the back side. I use that one when I add a lining. Gives it a little bit, more play in there, a little bit easier to wet form. So this one will be that version. You can use either, of course. I use these awls to get all the holes lined up really well. Once they're lined up, we'll go ahead and start the second size. You can see how the front is a little bit longer. It's a little bit more of a headache to glue, but once you do it a little bit, it works good, and I think, like I said, it gives you a better product. It's easier to wet form. Gives you a lot nicer result, but there are two versions, so we'll let the glue dry and come back to this, and same thing using the awls for hole alignment. Just kind of go around and make sure everything's good. When that's done, we'll go ahead and punch the belt holes for the front side. We'll work on the edges a little bit, and then time to wet form. I let it soak for a couple minutes, get the leather all nice and soft. And by the way, I went ahead and what you didn't see was finished sewing the rest of the holster. So here we go. We got final wet form. Fits all nice and snug, but yet loose enough to get out. That's a issue you kind of got to watch for when once it's on your belt. You still want to be able to get it out with ease, but yet you don't want it to just fall out. So this, I gave it a shot of oil and Did some work on the edges. It's more of a final product, still nice and tight in there, but yet, like I said, it just snaps in. So there you go, how we make an XD holster, an XD40. Thanks for watching.